figures or military equipment that they've lost in the process.
What are the optics there in Moscow surrounding the whole issue of these sanctions, these hard-hitting sanctions, we understand, Dorsa? I mean, is there a feeling there that they will deter Mr. Putin at all?
No, absolutely not. Vladimir Putin has said in the past that any kind of sanctions imposed on this country, they can first withstand them, and two, they would actually hurt the other side imposing it more than it would the Russians, because there is a lot of foreign investment in this country. Many analysts I've spoken to in the past few weeks, they said that
нахуй, блядь, ебашит,
there's a lot of business that this country does with the world, and for sanctions to take place, they would also hurt the other side using it because they would inevitably be affected by it as well. But we have to remember that just over the past 24 hours, the Russian currency has lost about 30% of its value, and the Russian stock market also drastically asked officials to close it for a few hours. And we have heard figures from officials saying that, outside of Russia, saying that the number of Russia's wealthiest men have actually lost $39 billion in less than 24 hours as a result of what's taken place. And I think that figure will only increase after we heard of these sanctions coming into place. But Vladimir Putin has said that they have very much worked on insulating.
They've lost approximately 450 personnel, the Russian forces. They've lost a significant number of tanks and armoured vehicles, and indeed the Ukrainians have brought down a fighter jet, or I think 3 fighter jets at least, and a number of helicopters. And if you remember, President Putin's, one of his reasons for this was all about putting forces into the Donbass. He has failed to break through the Donbass line of control, which was supposed to be one of the reasons he was doing this. So while Russia is huge in its forces, and while Russia is obviously entering Ukraine through a number of different axes, from the south, from the north, from Belarus, and remember that promise, they were all going to leave Belarus, and through the east of the country, they haven't achieved their goals so far. You know, I said very clearly about a month ago that we are not going to be sending British troops to fight directly with Russian troops. We are going to hold the line in NATO. We've always supported Ukraine's application to NATO over the last 15 years. Not every country has wanted them to join. We've done the next best thing, which is train over 20,000 Ukrainians, provided them with lethal capabilities, which they are using right now. And, you know, but I'm not putting British troops directly to fight Russian troops. That would trigger a European war, because we are a NATO country, and Russia would therefore be attacking NATO.
Defence Minister Ben Wallace. Well, Ukraine has been the subject of continued discussions in the House of Commons today. We can take a look at that live. Defence Minister James Heappey was answering an urgent question on the situation in Ukraine. And Mr. Heappey, that's not him you're seeing obviously at the moment, but he was saying that British and NATO troops must not play an active role in the Ukraine conflict. He said the risks of miscalculation in such a scenario could become existential. And he said we must all in this House be clear that British and NATO troops should not and must not play an active role in Ukraine. He warned about how the situation could escalate very quickly if people miscalculate. And that is the scene in the House of Commons for you. I think that maybe James Heappey back on his feet it is, and I think we can listen in.
The Honourable Gentleman is absolutely right that there are a whole range of things, satellite phones most obviously.
With that situation, it is extremely important to have a unity of the whole world, and I would like to thank you, to thank the West to support us so far, because everybody should understand, Putin declared the war not for Ukraine. Putin declared the war to the whole world, to every single person who watching now CNN. And I think this is also a war personally to the President Biden, and Ukraine's only scene is just willing to be free, willing to be democratic, willing to return back to the European family. And I'm proud that under my presidency, we do our best to to make a reform and to go out from the Soviet Union second edition, which is a dream of Putin. And we shall deal with Putin like with a man of the lost reason. And he's just simply mad. He's just simply crazy. He's just simply evil to come here to kill Ukrainian we lost now about 130 Ukrainian soldiers, and about 800 Russian soldiers were killed just yesterday under the report of Ukrainian Minister of Defense. And I just want to declare Putin will not stop Ukraine in our movement to the European Union. And that's exactly why we shall secure Ukraine today and to support Ukraine we stand tomorrow. And with that situation, definitely we need, what is it? Great to see you. We definitely want to tell that this is our joint fighting. We really need the sanction which make Putin weaker and which make Putin to pay for his absolutely disastrous behavior. We definitely need now SWIFT, because SWIFT started now to be the same symbol as a Nord Stream 2. This SWIFT is the symbol of our solidarity, and this is the things definitely help us. We definitely need to block Russian ships and Russian planes. Everything we could, and I call on the men of faith and courage in the West to come to Ukraine support today. And this is the maximum you can do to support democracy and freedom in the whole world. Please call Russian people with all media potential you have. Just this moment, in many cities around Russia, people definitely make a protest against Putin, which not happening many years. And with that situation is just the only thing to keep world safe, the only thing to continue our movement. Sanction, weapon supply. By the way, I want to thank US, UK for the Javelin and the NLAW. I want to inform you that my battalion has both NLAW and Javelin, and every single shot with the Russian tank was successful and effective. This is also your part of success. Thank you.
Mr. President, if you can still hear me, I just want people to know where you are. You are in central Kyiv right now, which is here. We have had word of fighting just not far from you, several miles up in the Obolon district here. We just heard moments ago that U.S. intelligence sources are telling CNN there are concerns that Kyiv could fall within the next day to 4 days, at risk of falling to the Russians. Are you yourself personally armed at this point, and do you feel that you are a specific target of the Russians?
Look, I have a feeling that I am specific target of the Russian for already 8 years. And this is, me is just a symbol. We are not afraid of them. And just now, while we are here, we have a report from our civil defense that in 5 minutes we will have a Russian bomber in the center of Kyiv. And we have a bomb shelter right 100 meters from here. But I'm not going to interrupt our interview, because the information war which Putin make against Ukraine is the part of the hybrid war he do against us for the 8 years. And I try to do my best that world should know the truth about situation in Ukraine. We Ukrainians are not standing in line for the bread or for the cash from the bank machine. We are standing in line for the weapons. We are standing in line to give our blood to our soldiers. And with this situation, definitely we demonstrate a unique quality that we can stand against Russian aggression. We can stand against Russian occupation. We are united together with the whole world.
And again, I see you there among the territorial defense forces, and we have had word that there's been an official call from the government for Ukrainians to arm themselves with guns and also Molotov cocktails. Is that enough? Would you like to see the United States, NATO, enforce a no-fly zone over the entire Ukrainian nation?
definitely we should do maximum we can. President Biden yesterday to say about the cyber attack against Russian troops, to switch off his electricity, to redirect all the tank troops, and this is extremely important. And this is extremely important for us, that we feel that we are not alone, that you are together with us. We are fighting for democracy and freedom against Russian aggressor without any reason. Putin make an attack of us, and this the maximum you can. This is the name sanction from the hell. This is direct message from the great leader of the Western world, and Putin should feel himself in the hell. This is his future, and your sanction definitely help him to feel exactly like that.
Mr. President, can you tell me what you and the group you're with right now there are armed with, and what your intention is if the Russians roll in the next few hours?
Easy. Just my assistants here. This is the short Kalashnikov. We have just, let me see, maybe 4 and low on the 300 members of the battalion of the territorial defense. And we have 2 machine gun, and we have more or less that's it. We don't have any heavy artillery, we don't have tanks, we don't have an armed personal carrier, because we launched this process just a couple of days ago. And we create that for the 2 days. This is the long line of the people who want to enlist it in the battalion, but we don't have enough arms for that. And this is the only limits why the civil defense, the normal, ordinary people, sometimes never been in the army, staying in line now to join us. This is extremely touchable and extremely great demonstration how Ukrainian people hate Putin and how we are against Russian aggression. This is very clear.
How long do you think you can hold out?
Forever. I think that Putin never will catch Ukraine, despite no matter how many soldiers he has, how many missiles he has, how many nuclear weapons he has. We Ukrainians are free people with a great European future. This is definitely like that.
The former president of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko, thank you for being with us. Please stay safe.
Thanks a lot.
The former president of Ukraine on the streets right now as part of the territorial defense, armed, as you could see there, with a number of other people with rifles, also machine guns, waiting for the Russian invasion that could be coming just hours from now into the city center. This is CNN special live coverage. We'll be back right after this.
Is it a military intervention or an annexation?
You're watching Al Jazeera with our continuing coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The fighting there this hour intensifying as Russian troops are closing in on the capital. There are fears Russia wants to encircle Kiev. Gunfire and explosions have been heard in the district of Obolon in the northern sector of the city. That sent people running for cover. Citizens have been ordered to stay indoors. It comes after overnight strikes on Kiev. Residents have been evacuated after rockets hit residential buildings. The Ukrainian army says Russia fired on civilian areas, but its air defense systems repelled the attacks. Moscow has denied carrying out missile strikes on Kiev. The UN Refugee Agency says around 100,000 Ukrainians have now already been displaced. Thousands are fleeing to nearby EU states. Russia has closed its airspace to aircraft flying in from the UK. Now that comes after London banned Aeroflot from landing in the UK. The Kremlin says it will retaliate against Western sanctions. Germany has sent 3 fighter planes to Romania to support the NATO mission there. It follows several other deployments of troops to Romania. Earlier, the US and the UK all sent jets and military vehicles to Romania to further bolster the alliance's eastern flank. Dominic Kane joins us live now from the Bureau in Berlin. Dom, hi there. How significant is this?
Well, it's one more sign of the determination, the resolve of the German government to be a central part of NATO wherever possible. And given that NATO is dispatching its forces to bolster, to buttress the eastern flank, as it has been put by Jens Stoltenberg and others, then this is what Germany can do. It's not the only thing that the German government is doing. We know also that 2 naval vessels are going to be on Station 1 in the Mediterranean, and 1 is being sent to the Baltic Sea. Visible sign for the Baltic states, who are EU member states, but also NATO member states, that Germany takes as far as it raised when all NATO member states agreed to spend 2% of their budget on defence. Germany's not getting there quite yet. So 3 Eurofighters to Romania. Clearly, they will be of no assistance in the Ukraine crisis, but this is more to be seen as something visible, tangible, as it were, a way of saying to Romania, and in terms of the naval vessels being dispatched to the Baltic and to the Mediterranean, a way of saying to member states, hey, we take this seriously, this is what we can do straight away, and we can think and talk about further such gestures, as it were, as the need arises.
Dom, you'll keep us posted, I'm sure, but in the meantime, thank you so much. Dominic Kane there, our Berlin correspondent. Well, staying with the NATO posture in all of this, the US is reinforcing NATO forces across Europe with 7,000 additional soldiers. Al Jazeera's Patty Culhane has more on that angle from the Pentagon.
Senior defense officials here at the Pentagon are increasingly talking about a concern that Ukraine isn't the end of it, that they could advance towards NATO countries. That's why you repeatedly hear officials here and at the White House say that they will enforce the NATO treaty, which basically says an attack on one is treated like an attack on all. To that end, they are sending an additional 7,000 soldiers to Germany. They're part of an armored brigade combat team. They're coming out of Colorado, and they said from Germany they could be moved to other places within Europe. This is on top of other soldiers that they've sent in the weeks leading up to this. So now there's a total of 14,000 additional troops there, not to mention the tens of thousands that are permanently stationed there. And they've also sent equipment. We know that they announced today that for each of these countries, 2 F-35 fighter jets have landed in Romania, Lithuania, and Estonia. Attack helicopters are on the way, and they're not ruling out the possibility that they're going to send even more forces, even more equipment to reassure the allies, but also they say to send a message to Russia when they say they back the NATO treaty, they mean it.
OK, let's get more for you. Let's drill down into the sanctions and how they're going to work and what kind of impact they will have. EU leaders agreeing to impose sanctions that target 70% of the Russian banking market, as well as the major state-owned companies. Close coordination with the White House came about yesterday. They're being submitted for approval at a meeting due to be held in Brussels today. However, the sanctions do stop short of blocking Russia from the SWIFT global payment system. That one's based in Belgium. US sanctions are also targeting Russia's financial system. The US President Joe Biden yesterday saying he wants to impede Russia's ability to do business. Kimberly Halkett with more on that from the White House.
After consulting with his National Security Council in the White House Situation Room and a virtual meeting with G7 leaders, U.S. President Joe Biden made good on his promise to inflict massive costs on Russian President Vladimir Putin for invading Ukraine.
Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences.
The new sanctions target major Russian banks and Russian elites, and in coordination with allies representing more than half the global economy, are designed to cut off Russia from the world's financial system. Russian assets in the U.S. are also now frozen.
We will limit Russia's ability to do business in dollars, euros, pounds, and yen.
Export controls to curtail Russian high-tech imports are also being imposed to cripple Russia's military and high-tech capabilities. The moves are backed by top congressional Democrats like Senate leader Chuck Schumer, who condemned Russia's invasion and pledged support for Ukraine.
Ukrainians are tough and resilient. I know they will not give up their country. They will fight fiercely for it.
But Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell is blaming Biden for the crisis.
I think the precipitous withdrawal from Afghanistan in August was a signal to Putin and maybe to Chinese President Xi as well that America was in retreat.
Across America, demonstrators protested Putin's invasion. After a generation of fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, most Americans are war-weary. In a recent poll, just 26% of Americans support the U.S. playing a major role in the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Biden has
stand by
promised
for this.
U.S.
This is CNN's special live coverage.
That things are going to stabilise for a while.
Can you give us some insight into the rationale, the strategy of this kind of staged approach to sanctions? Because we had a wave earlier this week when Vladimir Putin first recognized the independence of these breakaway areas of eastern Ukraine. The extra wave came after the full-scale invasion. Why this kind of incremental approach? Why not hit them with a big bang first?
I think it's for several reasons. The first wave, if you like, was to show intent, that there was an intent for the West to act together, and it was a signal. What we're seeing now is a concerted action, and the important thing is that the allies need to move together. So these are complicated processes, and the process of disconnecting Russia from the global financial system, euro, dollar, sterling, etc., is going to take some time. So doing these things in a progressive way and making sure that that agreement between all of these allies is maintained is the single most important thing, because that sends a very strong signal to Russia that everybody is aligned around making sure that Russia and its economy is isolated.
Okay, Rebecca Harding from Coriolis Technologies, thank you very much for joining us. We are told that there could be more sanctions to come, and one of the toughest financial sanctions that the West could place on Russia would be to remove the country from the SWIFT system, which facilitates international bank transfers. Now, despite some expectations and pressure that Russia would or should be frozen out of the system, it hasn't happened yet. It is currently used by 11,000 financial institutions around the world to process financial transactions. Well, joining me now to analyse the willingness or lack thereof to freeze Russia out of SWIFT is Justin Urquhart-Stewart. He's the founder of the investment platform Regionally. Thanks very much for being with us, Justin.
My pleasure.
Are we getting any closer, do you think, to Russia being taken out of SWIFT?
Well, the issue with SWIFT has been described as a money transmission system, but it's not actually a money transmission. It's a messaging system, because all it does is send a message from one bank to another correspondent bank in whichever country you're dealing with. And so it's a secure messaging system. So much more important, actually, than this would be to actually look at something called the dollar clearance banks. So the banks which actually handle all the dollar clearing, and most of the international payments coming out of Russia are in dollars. So if you stop the Russia going through dollar clearance, that means they cannot actually do money transmission systems. So SWIFT in itself sounds as though you just cut it off. It's quite straightforward. No. Address the correspondent banking system so that those banks who are holding US dollars on behalf of a Russian bank would therefore be frozen, and that's how the system would stop. So you don't actually have to take them out of SWIFT at all.
Okay. Just one of the things I've seen written about the European reluctance to freeze Russia out of SWIFT is the fact that we in Europe pay for a lot of our Russian oil and gas in using this SWIFT system. And if Russia were frozen out, we couldn't pay our bills. Do you think that is perhaps in the background as a reason?
Well, it sounds a bit like an excuse in many ways, because there's still ways of payment. And I don't mean wheelbarrows full of dollars being wheeled across the border. But no, you could actually go back to the old system we had before, which was by telex. Now, telex machine, for most people, they wouldn't have an idea what that was. But for those people of a certain age, maybe remember football results coming through on a telex machine. Basically, you telex one bank to another bank, and that gives you confirmation that payment could be made. So actually, they could still carry on doing this, but not using SWIFT. It would be a little bit more archaic, but still operate perfectly effectively. But it doesn't sound as dramatic as pulling out of SWIFT. I say that's not necessarily the answer to it.
So it sounds like you're saying actually freezing Russia out of SWIFT wouldn't be as impactful as some people are making it out to be. So were it not, why don't they just do it?
Well, frankly, I'm not surprised that they haven't done it already. But if they were trying to be better at it, they've already addressed two particular banks, the Sberbank and BTV. Now, what they've done by freezing those bank accounts for those particular banks, they're their correspondent accounts. And so by doing that, they then can't do their dollar transactions. And for two banks particularly, 80% of their transactions are in dollars. So that's how you'd really get them to stop it. So almost getting rid of this messaging system, as you were, almost the email system of SWIFT, doesn't really do very much, but it sounds dramatic. No, go to the actual cogs and operation of the system and shut down the correspondent banking accounts, and you've actually then shut it off.
Okay, Justin Urquhart-Stewart from Regionally, thank you very much for your analysis. That's it from me. Back to you now, Anita.
Tag, thank you very much. We'll be talking about that SWIFT payment system in just a moment. But before we do that, let me show you the latest pictures we have from Kyiv, the outskirts of the capital city, showing Russian armoured vehicles moving through that what looks like a largely residential suburban area.
Record, and if you get a criminal record, and they make a point of telling people this, if you get a criminal record, that could count against you for the whole of the rest of your working life. So it's a very tough penalty that people potentially face here when they go out. And I think it is notable, very notable, that a short notice protests that are typically crushed by police in the past. So many people came out last night, not just Moscow, but all the other cities you talked about, St. Petersburg as well. I managed to talk to some of the protesters away from where the police were, obviously, and they told me that they were so angry, frustrated. They called what their government's doing barbaric. This isn't something that's happening in their name. Here's a couple of them speaking to me.
Cannot express how much pain we feel now. It hurts because it's our friends, our relatives.
I'm just scared, shocked, and I don't believe to our government.
Yeah, one lady told me, she said, I want to leave Russia. But it hurts, she said. I love this country. It's my country. I love this country. I can see the pain in her face and the tears building up in her eyes. She said she just can't handle the leadership, doesn't like the leadership, and this are the voices that are coming out. But I should stress, it's not just young people. I saw older people there being arrested as well. So this is something that Putin clearly sees as a threat to his messaging and is clearly trying to stamp out fast and hard in a heavy way. We shouldn't fool ourselves too. Probably more than 50% of the population here actually agree with what he's doing in Ukraine. They've bought into his propaganda, but a lot of people haven't.
A lot of people haven't. Nick, thank you so much for that report.
All right, the breaking news. U.S. intelligence sources tell CNN they are concerned Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, right here, could fall to the Russians within days. Joining me now is Nina Khrushcheva, professor of international affairs at the New School in New York. She's also the co-author of In Putin's Footsteps, Searching for the Soul of an Empire Across Russia's 11 Time Zones. Nina, we've been watching what's happening in Kyiv over the last several hours. This is the city center right here. We know there's fighting here in the northern Obolon district, not far away, just miles now from the city center. We saw the former Ukrainian president holding up a Kalashnikov, saying he is going to resist as long as he possibly can there. Christiane Amanpour used the word with us a few hours ago, unimaginable. What's happening is unimaginable. I know to an extent you share that.
Oh, I absolutely share that. I mean, I'm crying just watching this because also in the Russian news are forbidden to report on anything that they are not officially sanctioned. So most of the Russians don't even know that we are going on Kyiv. I mean, we, the Russians, going in Kyiv, but actually part of the Donetsk-Luhansk operation. So there is knowledge that some larger going on, but not enough information. In fact, they're forbidden, and every news source says we are only reporting what we're supposed to do when the Russian officials tell us to do. But we are watching this and we are looking at this, and I spent a lot of time in Kyiv. And just 2 days ago, I told you that Putin is not suicidal. He is not going to go in Kyiv because it's madness. So here are going in Kyiv, and we're watching like the remake of some horrible dystopian novel right now, and we're in it. Ukrainians are in it and Russians are in it, and they're really going out in droves to protest it.
Look, if Kyiv were to fall, again, here's the capital, we see all the other movements here.
It is possible we'll see more sanctions coming from the UK, perhaps to look at further oligarchs, to look at other companies or industries that the Foreign Office here judges might be involved in the Russian war machine as they see it. But certainly when it comes to SWIFT, things are moving quite slowly. And when it comes to the idea of a no-fly zone or direct military intervention in Ukraine, I think the chances of that are vanishingly small.
And just very briefly, Nick, there clearly is pressure, though, isn't there, for NATO to do more, short of, yes, boots on the ground, to become embroiled in a conflict directly head-to-head with Russian forces. But, a feeling that there needs to be something that it does to help the Ukrainians with the immediate threat that they face compared to the impact of sanctions, which will take longer to hit.
I think that's right.